I think we need a t-shirt. Wow, uh-oh. I think I promised you that today we would start the conversation off with some provocative presentations, and they certainly were. I mean, when I first saw the printed kidney thing, that was a real wow moment. And there's so many more wow moments, I think, embedded in Brian's discussion. And of course, what John is giving us is a blueprint for not being overwhelmed by the wow, but turning it into someone else's uh-oh. To take that and bring it into our own businesses, our own lives, and think about how are we going to be able to ride those waves, not become victims of them? How do we create that competitive separation that's so important? Wow and uh-oh. Let's give one more hand to our presenters. But wait a minute. It's Q4. We got to make our numbers. Do we have time to think about printed kidneys and self-driving cars and all these other wow things that we saw in there? We got a real uh-oh looking at us here. I got to get that building done. I got to get that product out the door. I got to get the movie done on time. So I want to shift the conversation a little bit into a conversation, invite my four panelists to come up on stage, and we're going to talk about innovation, strategy, technology trends in the context of some real-world businesses. Why don't y'all come on and join me up here? Welcome. Good. Welcome. All right. So, first of all, I want to thank you all for joining us this morning. I really appreciate having you here and the insights you're going to share with us here in a few minutes. And I think you all need to understand that in the psychological spectrum of scary things to do, public speaking is always the most frightening. It rates ahead of snake handling as the scariest thing. So these guys have done a great service for us coming up here today. I want to start out by having you just introduce yourselves, tell us where you live, what you do for your companies, and a little bit about your company itself. So Jess, why don't we start with you?
Sure. My name is Jess Peterson. I work for Webcore Builders, and we are a West Coast contractor. We do probably somewhere between $500 million to $1 billion a year, depending on the year, and I'd have to say these are lower numbers in these last couple of years, but mostly commercial construction. And we self-perform as well. We're one of the largest employers of carpenters in the state of California, so we do a lot of our own formwork, finished carpentry, as well as majority of our work is a general contractor as a CM, and have it work broadly basically through California, a little bit in Oregon and Seattle, and I've also expanded that somewhat to a CM capacity outside of the West Coast and into other parts of the world.
My name is Andrew Sheedy. I'm the manager for engineering design systems for Australia, New Zealand, Asia and China. Working for Wally Parsons, we're a large company in excess of 37,000 people. I believe we have offices in 137 offices in over 40 countries. And we offer a wide range of services, everything from hydrocarbons, infrastructure and environment, minerals and metals, and power, including nuclear generation. I'm based out of the Melbourne office, and it's a great opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Callan. Good morning. My name is Terry Brickman. I'm with PCL Construction. I'm the National Director of Quality Management. I reside currently in Denver, Colorado, and PCL is a 105-year-old company. And like Webcore, we specialize in three primary areas, petrochemicals and power plants and things like that, civil infrastructure, roads and bridges, and then also commercial buildings. And of course, commercial buildings in the last few years has been very, very down. We have 30 offices around North America, everything from Anchorage, Alaska to Honolulu, Hawaii, to all parts of Canada and the US. And just recently got awarded a $1 billion hospital in Melbourne, Australia. And this year we just closed the books at $10 billion worth of work across the country. And so again, very privileged to be here.
Welcome.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Friedrich Spitzer. I'm from Austria, actually. I'm working for Voith, actually for the IT department within Voith. Voith, in general, is a family-owned business, one of the largest German ones. We are placed in 50 countries all over the world, and we are around 40,000 people at the moment. Our main markets are paper industry, our energy, and mobility, and the youngest part of Voith is the service division. Yeah.
Good morning. All right, well, thank you and welcome again to the first Leadership Forum customer panel discussion. Let me start with a general question about the conversation that we just heard with John and Brian. John presented a definition of strategy as competitive separation. Terry, I want to start with you. Talk to me about how much of your managerial bandwidth goes to thinking about strategy this way versus the other things that we face day to day.
Well, it's a good question. Being around for 105 years as a company, we have to be competitive and we have to innovate in the marketplace. And what's occurring, just in the last few years is really it's leveling the playing field. And so what we're finding is smaller companies, smaller general contractors with an iPad can do very, very similar things and can appear to be very different. And there's no background to that. So we have to constantly think about innovation, constantly think about the next thing, because our competitors are right behind us. So it's always on our minds, and it's something that we have to really concentrate on, because construction hasn't changed dramatically, but the way we construct has, and using that technology is critical.
Friedrich, how about in your world? Technology separation, strategy?
We're a little bit in the same situation, I think. We are also a very old company. It's 140 years plus, and as a family-owned business, we are developing long-term strategies. We are not so dependent on the market or on the stock market. So, what we really want to do and build up like long-term partnerships with our customers, which is one of the key aspects of our strategy that we really can do and really can get into our business. We, of course, need to innovate as the market evolves. We are spending a lot of money in this area, but I think one of our key ways to innovate is also to, let's say, be very, very global and get all, let's say, the creativity of the different cultures into our business, get all different thinkings to get into how you come to a machine that we design into our company and to work with that.
Jess, sometimes the terms blue ocean and red ocean are used to describe different competitive environments. Red oceans being that circle of your competitive set that John talked about, where everybody's more or less doing the same sorts of things. You risk commoditization, you risk that race to the bottom, but that's the red ocean. The blue ocean is the new opportunity, the opportunity to move out beyond the current horizon on that curve that we looked at, that Porter curve on competitiveness. What are some of the blue ocean opportunities or red ocean type dilemmas that your industry may be facing today?
For us, the red ocean dilemma is that probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, we were doing 100% private work. I would say now we're probably about 70 or 80% public work because there's just not much of the private work out there. And so a little bit to the first question is we've had to completely rethink our strategy in order to survive. And that's been what we've been turning through the red ocean, is to try and really figure out how do we do that. There are a lot of unique ways, and in the same way that architects are a little bit more collegiate, I think that's forced us contractors to be the same. We're finding new ways to partner up that really add value to clients, and in different ways that help us think about how we move to that blue ocean side. And so I think that the things that kind of press us out there along the innovation scale are trying to get access to more data and to much more of the expertise that we're expected to bring along. And in our industry, we're expected to bring along and manage our subcontractors. And so a lot of the blue ocean stuff is using many of the models that we can now get to make correlations to that data that's much smarter than what we've had before. And it's all accessible. It's just a matter of how do you access it, how do you get it, how do you use it for estimating, scheduling, and then how do you actually sell that and convince owners that you have an edge.
So you said a very interesting thing there. You said in order to be more competitive, you've had to be more collaborative. Not a necessarily intuitive thought process. Andrew, do you concur? Do you see this sort of thing in your business?
I think collaboration between various disciplines and being a large organisation like we are, to get collaboration between the various offices is key. And then obviously taking that to the next level of then having that collaboration with our customers to understand what their needs are. And their needs, let's be honest, they're constantly changing as well. So, you know, we're almost in a bit of a catch-22 where our customers are changing, our competitors are changing, and as a result, we need to change proportionally as well.
Absolutely. But let's talk about reality for a moment. These over-the-horizon kinds of things, these technologies that might print homes, print hearts, and drive cars for us. Do we really have time to think about that day to day? I mean, you walk into work, you got 16 emails that came in the last 5 minutes since you checked your BlackBerry. There's some fire in some office somewhere. You got somebody knocking on your door wanting a report that was due yesterday. How do you balance that with these thoughts of strategy and competitive separation and so on? Terry?
Well, you're absolutely right, and they made us turn our phones off, so we have no idea how many emails we've missed just sitting up here. But that's the reality. We're in a very, very tight market right now. We, you know, at any given time, we've got a couple hundred projects underway in North America, and each one of those has to make money. And each one of the project teams members that are involved, it's a very delicate balance of, do I try this new technology? It may slow me down. It may cause me, I love the word disruption. Disruption on a job site is never a good thing. So I just wanted to clarify that. But that disruption that comes in vis-a-vis technology or any kind of device that can help you, you know, build your building better, quicker, faster, is important. So it's a very delicate balance, and so what we do a lot is we'll pilot a project, we'll find a specific project, and more importantly, a specific team, a team that is energized and looking for that kind of technological advantage, because it just, you know, the old school, as we talk about in the old days, the old school superintendents, they just want to build the way they've built for a number of years, but we have to look at a pilot project and then more importantly, the people and the personalities, and then once you've got that fit, you try it, see how it works, and then away it goes.
So Andrew, this balance between the day-to-day and thinking about the next evolutionary turn for the business, particularly tough, I think, for a business who runs as a consulting business. You bill hours out. How can you afford to take productive people out of the field to go think about tomorrow's business when you got to deliver today's business? How do you balance that at Worley?
Firstly, if I only got 16 emails in 5 minutes, it'd be a good day.
Fair enough.
One thing we've tried to establish in Worley Parsons is a culture of knowledge sharing. Again, because we are a geographically dispersed company with a lot of people, is creating online forums, which we typically call a suggestion box. So users of all the engineering systems, and for that matter, just not the users of the engineering systems, but anyone in the company that has an idea of how we can potentially improve things in the design space, can suggest a recommendation. And that's obviously publicly available within the company where everyone can view it, and they can either respond to it, they can assign a star rating based on the credibility that they see in a particular idea. And we try and go through a cycle typically of, say, a 14-day period where the comment or task would be active and visible, and then we'd take it offline and then review it for, you know, how much value actually is there in this idea. And if it has value, of course, we take it to the next level and obviously involve the person that came up with the idea or suggested it. But of course, there are some ideas that never see the light of day because maybe they're in that impractical part. They still get kept as a point of record that we can obviously refer back to, but having that environment where people can suggest ideas and those ideas can be listened to and subsequently actioned appropriately, I think is key.
Do the ideas all have to be on the scale of printing a building, or can they be smaller incremental improvements as well?
No, absolutely not. When we've got projects that could be potentially in excess of 1 million man-hours, one small suggestion may save, let's say half an hour a week. But if you've got 200 designers and engineers sitting on a project over a whole full year period, I mean, we're talking literally thousands of hours. And again, it depends on what the cost model is for the project. Reimbursable, yes, there's some benefit there, but particularly with some new projects that we're seeing coming along lately where they're lump sum, fixed price, no room for manoeuvre or variations, we have to be as productive and efficient as possible.
Friedrich, let's talk about manufacturing for a moment, because I think in the manufacturing world, it's particularly attractive to say, I'm going to spend my time squeezing 10% additional efficiency out of my existing line, rather than thinking about building a new one. How do you balance that trade-off?
First of all, it will be interesting to print out the paper machine.
You should describe the paper machine you talked to me about at dinner last night, just for a moment, the cardboard maker.
Just to give you rough numbers of a paper machine. Paper machine is about 6 football fields long. It has 3 times the steel that you can build an Eiffel Tower on, and it has 5 times the electronic circuits that an Airbus has. So this is a rather big machine, and as I said, I would like to see the printer. That's not the point. I think what we do, in order to get a machine done, it's not the parts and the assembling of the parts that differentiates the machine and differentiates us from others. It's how to make out of pulp with 98 or more % of water, very, very thin paper in the end. That's some of the know-how we have. So you cannot just rebuild a paper machine by producing its components. And coming back to your question, what it struggles us most in the process at the moment is that throughout our design process, we are creating lots and lots of course, for this big machine, information that when we hand it over to the next process step, we need to decrease it, make it very dumb, very intelligent, non-intelligent again, to be able to have this information available for the next process steps. And so our designers spend a lot of additional inefficient work, creating this unintelligent information out of intelligent. That's really something that could make us more creative, because it's also for the designer not very interesting to do that, and could make it also much more interesting for the customer because it's cheaper.
Indeed. So, Terry, John's a professor, and we all know that professors are highly suspect. Do we really need to think about all this blue ocean strategy stuff, or can't we just out-execute the competition? Can't we just be the fastest, the bestest, the mostest, and win that way? What's wrong with that picture?
Well, John is an interesting professor. I've gotten to know him a little bit. I like the wow factor that he talked about, but the reality is it has to create efficiencies for the project teams. And once we create those efficiencies, we will outperform other folks. But you constantly have to be looking for the next wow, not for just creating the wow for the fact of something new and something creative. It's got to be effective for the folks in job sites. I mean, the types of projects we do, very large, very complex, you know, at any one given time you could have 1,000 craftspeople on your job, and you have to make sure that every one of those people is heading in the right direction. And so you've got to use technology, you've got to stay ahead of your competition with the operational effectiveness, but you've got to make sure that you manage those 1,000 people on the job site and everybody's working effectively. If not, you've got chaos, and then you've got definitely have disruption.
So Jess, in some sense, you and Terry are competitors. Can you just out-execute them? Or are you looking for that way to not have to meet them in the first place?
Oh, no, we can absolutely execute them.
Okay.
Wait a second, rebuttal here.
Now we got a conversation.
No, I mean, that's what you tell when you sell, right? And when you're marketing, and then you have to find ways to actually prove that. And you know what? There are things that they've done in markets that we just aren't familiar with, and part of that strategy is just getting up to speed to learn what they've done. There are things that we've done in other markets that they haven't, and we've learned how to do that, and that's why, you know, we all kind of exist because we have a recipe, and that recipe works in the time and the period and the way we do things. But you know, a lot of what we're seeing even today up there are things that people aren't quite ready for. Those aren't incremental increases. Those are major leaps. And I think what we're finding is that there's that class of people, whether you're the CFO and you have your favorite tool and software, and you're the operations guy and you have your favorite tool and software, and everything else, everyone's kept all those things separate, and that they're going to have to let go. But we haven't found a good way to let them all let go at one time because we still have to get the job done. And so Terry was talking about prototype jobs. There's also prototype processes that you just have to take to the side, and you have to say, we're going to do that in this new way where we're going to estimate and we're going to schedule, and then we're going to roll it out. And then you find those ways to do it, to access the information, to manage that in ways that you need to, and then through that managing, be able to outperform in ways that you thought of and the competition didn't.
So one of the things that both Brian and John mentioned was the spectrum of innovation, from the impossible to the expected required, right? And different companies have a different appetite for where they live along that spectrum. If you look at James Cameron and what he did with Avatar, he really came in at somewhere between impossible and impractical and did some pretty amazing things with that movie at an enormous cost, $470 million or some such. Talk to me a little bit, and I'll start with you, Andrew, about where you think Worley's comfort zone is on that spectrum. Do you like to be the pioneer? Do you think you're the fast follower, or you're somewhere in between? You talked about the incremental innovation of your suggestion box, yeah. but where do you think the company as a whole lives on that spectrum?
From my perspective, I think we're probably in between. We'd like to, I mean, obviously because we are a public company as well, we shareholders, we try and minimise risk where possible. So that's why we sort of are sitting in between the impossible. We like to see other people try it as well. So in that way, you know, if there's a bit of a trend that's creating in the market, then we can obviously take that on as well. There's some particular things that we are working on, I believe, as innovators in that area, particularly around data management. But you know, the adoption of new products and things like that, we'd like to see get a little bit of momentum in the industry, but then be able to quickly respond to it as well. And having that collaboration, as I mentioned previously, is a good foundation to build upon to be able to adopt new technology or new opportunities when they do arise.
Friedrich, where do you think Voight sits in that spectrum?
It's interesting. I was just thinking about what you asked, what Andrew said, and if we are thinking about our main products, they are that come out of our machines, right? They are pretty commodity. It's paper, it's energy, it's mobility, yeah. So it's nothing. Yeah, that's why Voight is also not pretty known to the market, because what comes out of the products, right, is commodity. But to differentiate us and to be ahead of our competitors, of course, our machines need to be much more forward, much more innovative. And that's an interesting gap that we have to focus. So with what we are doing, we need to be on the let's say impractical side to get new machines out there, to get new concepts out there, to get. We are also. I saw the wave power power plant that John showed us. We are also investigating a lot in this business, but we are also investigating a lot in hydraulic pump storage plants, because with all the trends that we are seeing at the moment, the wind power plants and everything, you still need to cope with when there's no wind, and we still need the energy. So the investment, and where we have to be much more forward thinking, is still, if we see a trend like wind power, we could also invest in wind power. We did this with our gearboxes and so on, but we also need still to invest and to innovate in the let's say old-fashioned business areas in order to make them more effective to cope with what's coming out from, let's say, the new trends.
Construction, where do you think, is it possible for a construction company to live in the impossible end of that spectrum, or the impractical end of that spectrum? Where does PCL find itself, Terry?
Well, our tagline is construction leaders, and it's very deliberate. There's leaders and then there's bleeders. And what I say bleeders, the technology is changing so quickly that, it's coming out, it's the latest, greatest things. The salesmen are bugging you and saying, you got to try this, you got to try this. And ultimately, sometimes those things fail. And they become frustrating to the project delivery team to have to use this device or some kind of technology that doesn't work for them. And so there's a lot of wasted energy goes on there. So what we do is we take a little bit more of a conservative approach. Again, we've been around for 105 years. We watch the waves and the trends and things going on. And we don't jump in right away. We'll keep an eye on our competitors. We'll keep an eye on the industry, kind of watch what's going on and do a very strategic discussion around that. And then if it makes good business sense, we'll do it. A number of years ago, when the smartphones just came out, for example, there was an edict that said, we're going to switch to this smartphone, everybody's going to get it, and thousands of phones were purchased. And we were going to look at the blueprints on your little handheld device, and it didn't work. It simply didn't work, because we had superintendents out in the field with big gloves on that couldn't push the buttons and couldn't see the display. So it just absolutely didn't work, and we went back to our old cell phones. Now iPods or iPads have come out and things like that, which makes it a lot more practical. And we're investigating that and jumping into that where it's appropriate. But leading edge, but not bleeding edge.
Got it. We've talked a lot about technology, and it's easy to get caught up in the wow factor of technology. But at the end of the day, companies are made up of people. And I think we can all agree that identifying an opportunity for innovation, identifying an opportunity for technology breakthrough is one thing. Actually getting the dogs to eat the dog food is something quite different. Culture change is often required to make that innovation happen, to adopt that technology. Talk a little bit about the culture change aspect, and I'll start with you, Andrew. Have you got some examples of where you've had to deal with what looked like a great technological innovation, but you couldn't get the culture to adopt it and to move forward?
Well, actually, one activity that I'm in the process of at the moment is, and I've been working with Autodesk with this, is over the last 6 months we've been completing monthly webcasts or webinar sessions, and I think the key that we're trying to drive towards is giving people the information so they can then make that step, or basically taking the dogs to eat the dog food, to use that term. But obviously with some different locations and different people for that matter, it could be potentially a quantum leap into some of these new tools and new opportunities. So bringing them along for the ride and then answering their questions and having that dialogue with them throughout the process, in my mind, is key, and that's certainly the way I try and manage my areas of responsibility.
How about you, Jess? Culture, getting the mindset of the company to shift to see the possibilities, the opportunities in some new technology or innovation. How challenging is that for you all?
It's very challenging, but I think it starts with how you set your culture up. Being headquartered in San Francisco and rubbing elbows with Silicon Valley, we're a little bit more giddy about technology and accepting it. And our tagline is value through innovation. And we haven't been around 100 years, and we've been around 40 years, and there's stability to that, but it's more about top-down, really saying, okay, we do want to invest, we do want to try, we do want to get out there with something new and something different, but it has to really bring value. It really, I mean, and that's just to us as an organization to make it easier to do it, because let's face it, I mean, we're typically bidding on something where it's our fees, our overhead and profit, along with our general conditions, the cost of our people. So how can we reduce those costs by better making processes more thorough, more accurate, and not having to have as many people doing some of the things that they were doing before. And so you have to look at those, and I'd say we're probably a little bit more on the bleeding side. Like I say, we have these prototype processes that we'll take offline, but we don't want that disruption to be throughout the company. We want it to be within a small group, in a small area, let them run with it, see how they go, and then if it becomes something that really is viable, then it becomes a rollout. And then that's part of a larger culture issue, is how do you get that rollout and convince people that they'll use something. And quite honestly, if they can't see the value in it, it's really hard to convince them. I don't care how hard the president slams his fist and says we'll do it. If people don't see the value there, it's really hard to integrate into your culture.
So you have to sell them. You have to really sell them on the value.
Yeah, it has to be practical. It really has to be functional and make their life easier. Once they can see that once it's up and running and they accept it, it will do that.
Friedrich, culture, hard to change at Voigt?
For a company that old and that the average Voigt employee is 17 years at our company, it's, the culture we built up is has come over decades, has brought over from decade to decade, and what we are seeing at the moment is also the last 20 to 25 years for it spreading out all over the world. We need to really cope with that change to get all these different cultures in our company, and also cope with other countries where we don't see a culture that we were used to have in the past. And that's also affecting technology a lot. Interesting in this sense is 3D introduction. We thought at the beginning, right, we will do this. It's 3D, everybody goes 3D, it's 3D. But with designers living their lifetime with 2D, with sheets and paper. We are producing paper, so we don't want to go away from that, right? 3D was really hard to get there, and we had to really make it valuable for our process, and that's why we first started introducing 3D just as another tool in the CAD area, yeah, but we're not successful. Then we started one step higher, or probably 2 steps higher, thinking about the business process and where it makes sense to incorporate 3D. Yeah? And then we could also show people, yeah, where they really have benefit from that new technology implementing.
So you said an interesting thing to me last night as we were walking out of dinner. I don't know if the rest of y'all heard his comment, referring to one of Brian's big trends, the cloud and the network effect. And you said as we were walking out the door, and it kind of ties into this culture discussion, I don't need cloud computing, I need cloud, what did you say?
I always say
a
it's
human
cloud engineering.
You need cloud engineering. You need a cloud of people with skills. I thought that was a very interesting comment. Cloud computing is one thing, cloud engineering is something quite different. Talk about that just a moment.
You know, cloud engineering is let's say, nothing new to Voigt, because we always had the strategy of having a strong IT within Voigt. So, and as we have an own IT department, that's running all the system for the user, for the end user, the cloud was there. He got the service. Infinite computing, it's a different world. But cloud computing, having putting your PC into your plug and having your environment, that was there. We began at the beginning of the century to much more standardize our environment that the engineers work on. And now we are on a stage where we really, also with all the different countries developing, all the different people that we can get into the job. We need to really develop a platform where we can integrate people as fast as possible into our projects to get resources in, to get know-how in, to get creativity in. And that's the platform we need. It's not the IT perspective of cloud, it's the engineering perspective. It's getting engineers, it's getting designers as fast as possible into the job that we have. And that's my belief. That's what we will need in the future and what we will see in the future.
Andrew, I saw you nodding a little bit during that discussion. How do you think about this, the human network, the cloud engineering concept that he was talking about?
I didn't hear the comment last night, but I'm nodding because I'm thinking about it, that, you know, we've got people with various skill sets all over the world within Morley Parsons, and yeah, obviously there's all that IT infrastructure and architecture burden that goes along with accessing those resources so they can access the project or the information. And yeah, what I'm interpreting that cloud engineering is, let's just say it's there and it's accessible to people, cost effectively and seamlessly, no matter where they are, rather than setting up massive IT data centers and everything to support it. It's taking it to where the people are. Yeah.
Going back to some of the technology trends that Brian highlighted, we infinite computing, the cloud, reality capture, digital to analog, and so forth. Jess, you look at those, are there any particular trends there that make you go either wow or uh-oh, in that you see the potential for them to impact your business in the medium to near term out there? What captures you in that list of trends that Brian talked about?
You know, the reality capture is one really good one, especially when you're doing renovation type work in the construction industry. When you're starting from a level playing field, a little bit more of it is kind of in the simulation where we almost get to the point where we're side by side with the engineers, you know, a little bit more, and we're endearing ourselves a little bit more to the architects and trying to work more cohesively as a group, because all this technology is great, but you know what, we still each have our jobs to do and our roles to play, and I'd like to believe that the more we can see something and how it's going to come together and how it works, that we can better collaborate around how we do that. And I think that to the extent that we can bring those tools out and they don't feel threatening to one discipline or the other, the better off we're going to be in being able to do that.
Terry, since you get back to your competitor here, any particular trends that struck you as either, wow, this could really make a difference, or uh-oh, I'm not paying attention to that, we better start looking at that?
Well, I think the infinite computing is the one that's the most exciting, because right now, on the job site where it happens, where you make your money or lose your money, it's all about the capacity of the computer that you have and the rendering capabilities. You know, using the Autodesk software with the cloud, you can do amazing things now that can stream down into your job site trailer, wherever that may be, across North America, and really provide the information that the team needs on a very quick, nanosecond basis. You know, you don't need as Andrew mentioned, the big computing power back at the main office, the mainframe anymore. You can simply do it on your laptop via the internet. So that's exciting. That's going to be the new wow, I think, for the industry. How
about for you, Friedrich?
Well, from a personal perspective, I like the idea of this virtual or this kidney thing that they're printing, because I a little bit have troubles with my knees, so in 5 years should be an opportunity. I've just to get through to this. From a business perspective, seeing the drones and the laser devices and so on, this could really generate a new business idea for us. You know, flying over the rivers or over power plants, over paper machine facilities, generating new business, seeing what's
building big-ass models. Yeah.
In the market there. It's interesting.
Well, Andrew, I think you get the last word.
Okay. Two things that I see are interesting is definitely the infinite computing or the cloud technologies, and we're still sort of investigating where we could potentially go with that. One thing that we're utilising presently, but probably not to its full capability, is the laser scanning. Obviously, out in a lot of old refineries, that have been built 20, 30 years ago, rather than sending a team of dozens of people out there with a tape measure to measure everything up, and there's always that level of human inaccuracy that comes along with that. We send out one guy, one of these $35,000 laser scanning devices, and we get a point cloud model with literally billions of data points that we can then correlate into a 3D model. We can minimise risk and safety issues as a result by identifying shutdown areas and things like that. So the infinite computing and leveraging more into the laser scanning technologies, I think, is where some key interest is for me personally anyway.
Gentlemen, it's been a very great pleasure and a privilege to talk with you today. Please give our guests a hand. So as we come to the conclusion of this initial session of our leadership forum, hopefully we've achieved what we wanted to, which is to start a conversation that will take place for the next 3 sessions that hopefully generates, again, new ideas, insights, things that you can take home and use to improve your own business. A quick piece of logistics here. As you can see, we're about to go into a 30-minute break. Again, use that break for networking. Use that break to continue the conversation we started today, both the blue sky and the over the horizon and how that relates to the day-to-day reality. After that, we'll begin the first of our 3 breakout sessions. Hopefully you've all got a list of your options there. There's a lot of very interesting sessions to choose from. At the end of the day, we're going to meet back in here. We'll have a reception, we'll have some hors d'oeuvres, some drinks, and a final wrap-up. So again, thank you all for coming, and I trust that you have a great day.